I think we came within a hair's breadth of a second civil war in this country, and we avoided it. And I think it's because God intervened.
Joe Biden is the guy who ran on the promise of uniting the country. He failed miserably on that, or we wouldn't be where we are.
I was just informed that while we were sitting here, Donald Trump has picked Senator J.D. Vance.
You kidding me?
People who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not unelected bureaucrats in the deep state.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be reviewing all things Vivek Ramaswamy over the past few days. Plus, I've got an exciting announcement to share with you guys. Now, it's an interesting time for Vivek because obviously he didn't get the Republican VP nod, and it's a little bit hard to see where he goes from here. What does he do when the massive hype around the Republican National Convention, as well as the events over the past week or so, die down? I'm going to go through some of his options in this video, as well as watching interviews and speeches that he's given over the past few days, including his amazing speech at the convention, and try to distill his essential message, which I really think is very important. And so with that, let's get into the first bit, which is Vivek's interview with Jesse Waters, where he is stopping no stations, taking no prisoners.
Let's bring in former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. What you're hearing from the Secret Service and the FBI, is this acceptable to you?
I think it's unacceptable level of non-transparency. And it's one thing, Jesse, if we're approaching this after the last few years where we have a perfect record of transparency, but we're not. You think about the Russia collusion hoax, the origin of COVID-19, the Hunter Biden laptop story suppressed on the eve of the last election with 51 intelligence officials or former intelligence officials signing off. We're at a place of low trust in this country. So I'm going to be guided by the facts, but what I will say is, right now more than ever, transparency is everything. The reason people don't trust the government is the government no longer trusts the people with the truth. And I think this is one of those occasions to say that, yes, we need accountability, we need transparency. President Biden should be doing a far better job than he has been. I think he would earn a lot of political points if he did. He should do it for the right reasons. But if he stepped up and said, you know, not only is this unacceptable in the United States, but the Secret Service failed in its mission and we're going to get to the bottom of what happened, that alone would inspire some confidence in the man who's supposedly the current commander-in-chief, but as on so many things, Jesse, he has fallen short on this one alone. And I think the reality is we're going to have to see other people, other leaders, hopefully the next president of the United States, Donald Trump, step up and fill that leadership void.
We're now hearing reports that almost 25, 30 minutes before the shooting, there were two locals that photographed and then transmitted the photos and then called in that this guy was acting suspicious once they saw him on the roof, once they saw him on the ground. How is it, if you have a counter-sniper team and all of these security officials, that no action was taken, Vivek? I just don't understand it.
Look, I think that, A, there's the facts of what actions were or were not taken, and it doesn't sound good based on what you've done, and I think you're doing important work in asking the hard questions that need to be asked. But there's the second question of the caginess of the existing apparatus to respond to those questions. And I want to draw a distinction, Jesse. There's a lot of people who do work in that bureaucracy who are individually good people. Look at the people who put their own bodies on the line. They were taking the gunshot instead of President Trump. That's their job, and at least they stepped up to do it. But that's different from the bureaucratic machine in Washington, D.C. And as Republicans, that's the distinction we need to draw. Are there individual good people mostly working in Washington, D.C.? Yes. But that bureaucracy becomes its own Leviathan, its own machine. And I think a top objective of the next presidency, the Trump presidency, as I believe it will be, should be to dismantle that federal bureaucracy once and for all. And without that, we're not going to be able to save this country.
So how do you do that? You go in, you fire Chris Wray? Because the last time he did that, he fired Comey, and it sparked a special counsel investigation.
Well, I think you got to go deeper than that. The dirty little secret is a lot of these agency heads, they're really themselves just the figureheads. If you get many of those people speaking candidly, what they will tell you is in their multi-thousand person organizations, they don't even have power in what really occurs. It's 3, 4 layers down these organizations. So I personally believe, this is my opinion, I think we need a 75% headcount reduction across the board. What Elon did to Twitter, what countless other business leaders do to failing companies, that's what we need to do to this failing federal bureaucracy. The mass deportation of millions of illegals from this country, I favor it. But the mass deportation I really favor is millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. That's how we get this country back.
Can we put you in charge of that? Can you just go in there and just shed 20% of the bureaucracy?
I'm talking 75%.
75%, all right.
That was a core premise of my presidential presidential candidacy, but I would say President Trump shares that same spirit. When he said drain the swamp, that's part of what he meant. Now, one of the things to know, Jesse, is the Supreme Court has given us some great precedents this year. A president has never been more armed to actually take down this bureaucracy than he has been right now. So to those who will say, why didn't President Trump do it in 2017? Well, the answer is he didn't have the legal and constitutional toolkit that the Supreme Court has now given us. So I think it's a unique moment in our history.
Just imagine hearing that and being one of those 75% people that Vivek Ramaswamy is talking about there. One of those 75% of tax hustlers. Those people who know their ass is grass if he ever were to come into power. I have a sneaky suspicion that those people would be trying to put a few checks and balances in place to make sure that Vivek is never able to ascend to such a position. And it's actually a similar situation to somebody else we know, namely Donald Trump, who decided in his 70s to try and defeat the deep state instead of trying to defeat Ken and Bill at a game of 18 holes on a Sunday morning. And so the question I have here, and I'm going to be very curiously reading your thoughts and comments on this one, is what does Vivek do next? Here are some of the options as far as I can see it. First one is that he takes a position in Trump's cabinet, but then the question becomes, what position? Let me know below. The second one is that he remains an ambassador. He continues to do his commentary work and his entrepreneurial ventures and gears himself up for a 2028 run. And then the third one is that he actually replaces JD Vance and takes his Ohio senator seat. I mean, that is where Vivek is from after all. So what do you guys think? Is it going to be one of those, or am I missing the plot completely? But for now, Vivek is still as powerful a presence as he has ever been during this movement and is doing some great speaking work. Check this one out.
That has called a Republican president a tyrant, a dictator, said it would be the end of the United States of America as we know it, said he would make us a laughingstock on the global stage. And those are exact quotes, actually, of what they said about Abraham Lincoln. Saw the Lincoln hat, you might have wanted me to remember that. Those were words that the Democrat-led media said about the first ever Republican president before he was shot and assassinated in 1865. So think about that in the moment that we live in today. We came within, I mean, Lincoln actually spoke at this convention. It was at a Republican convention. It was at a state convention, Republican state convention, I think in 1858, when he said a house divided cannot stand. That was on the eve of a nation that was on the brink of civil war.
That's right.
I think we came within a hair's breadth of a second civil war in this country, and we avoided it.
Yes.
And I think it's because God intervened. And I believe that he has given us a chance to answer his call.
Amen.
And I think that's the moment we live in right now. Is the hard part is we are in a kind of war in this country.
We are.
But the enemy is not our fellow citizens.
No.
Actually. It is an ideology.
That's right.
And so this is the work we have cut out ahead of us, is how do we win this war while still viewing our neighbors as our fellow citizens and not as our enemy combatants? Are we up to that challenge? I believe we are.
So with the events that have happened over the last week or so, with Trump being nearly assassinated, it doesn't strike you as a very unifying time. And we've seen a lot of people on the Democrat side stay silent about it. Some say that Trump has culpability in his near murder, and some people say straight up that they wish the guy didn't miss. But when you really think about it, and I think that Vivek has the right idea here, in some strange yet powerful way, this is the perfect time for a unifying message. I mean, a lot of people who just want to have a peaceful country, take care of their family, be good people, and aren't married to the Democratic Party are going to see that and think to themselves, do I really want to be associated with those guys, or do I want to be on the team of the guy who literally took a bullet for his country and got up the next day to make his 9 a.m. tee off? And the perfect example of this sort of rhetoric at the moment is liberal streamer Destiny. This guy is considered by his people as somewhat of like a conservative destroyer in debates, and he speaks fast and he Wikipedias his facts, and this has been happening for years. But in the last few days, this guy has become completely and utterly unhinged, and he's saying some of the most despicable things that you can imagine about the man who was murdered at the Trump rally, and also about other Trump fans and more.
F the dude, the firefighter guy, Trump, the people that support him. I just want you to know, okay, just in case you're confused or it seems like I'm, you don't, whatever. If one of you were in the crowd and you're a conservative fan of mine, and you end up, getting blown away or whatever the fuck, I'm making fun of you the next day on Twitter. I am 100%.
But anyway, just to be clear, fuck you, fuck the guy that got shot at the rally. This is why I don't give a fuck about showing sympathy. This is why I don't give a fuck. This is why I don't give a fuck about the sympathy for any of you losers, because you won't own up to anything.
Don't take it out on me because your wife left you, Fester.
Nobody is talking about
all
my
right. Everybody calm down. Jesus Christ. You got the skin complexion of Uncle Fester. Go worry about your
great,
ex-wife.
and you've got the voice tone of a guy with an A1C of 15, okay? Good for you.
That's fine.
Listen,
I don't even know what that means. God bless.
I'm sure you don't. That's why your feet are about to fall off, dipshit. Oh, muted me again. Okay,
oh my God.
Listen, all I'm saying is,
So I see a lot of conservatives losing their mind about this and getting very angry. And whilst I obviously understand that reaction because it's so heinous, I don't think that he should be cancelled. I actually think that it's a good thing to see this sort of brain rot just out in the open like this. And that's because normal people, which most people are, find it repulsive and they don't want anything to do with it. If this were to happen to Joe Biden or any other public figure on the left for that matter, it would be met with instant, wholesale condemnation, sympathy, and best wishes for whoever the victim was. Because we understand that politics and the culture war, that's one thing. We have a duty to be skeptical, to be critical of leaders, to debate, to defend good ideas, to challenge bad ideas. But when there's an event like this, it goes without even saying that it must be completely and utterly condemned. That goes for anybody who was violent on Jan 6, and it goes for anybody who was a violent BLM or Antifa activist. We are better than that, and that is why Western nations, historically, have been able to create the best, most moral, prosperous, and safest societies in history. But unfortunately, that is all under threat in the modern day, which is why we must fight, but never resort to political violence unless in self-defense. And whenever it rears its ugly head, we instantly condemn it. And I really do believe that that is a message that people can come together on left and right. And now for the next interview where Vivek furthers this point and also discusses what's next, which I found very interesting.
We have learned now that President Trump will adjust his speech, change it maybe entirely, focusing on that America should be united. What do you think of that? What do you think the message President Trump should convey at this convention?
I think his head is in exactly the right place. This is a time for national unity. You want to think about Abraham Lincoln, a little over 160 years ago, called on the same convention, saying that a house divided cannot stand against itself. Well, the reality is the United States of America is deeply divided today. Joe Biden is the guy who ran on the promise of uniting the country. He failed miserably on that, or we wouldn't be where we are. But I do think that Biden in particular faces a bit of a fork in the road, Trace, where on one hand, his entire message has been the histrionics about saving democracy. And the problem with that is it creates greater risk of the wrong national climate in this country. Yet on the other hand, if that's his only message, I think that there's real room for another candidate to replace him as well. So I think the Republicans this week would do well to focus actually less on President Biden and more on who we are and what we actually stand for. And I think the more we do that, the more successful President Trump is going to be, I believe, in delivering potentially a landslide this year.
It's interesting, Vivek, because I was listening to the president's Oval Office address there, and he was talking about, lowering the rhetoric and bringing the temperature down. And he said we must not go down that road. But, the honest truth is he brought us down that road. We're going to show examples later in the show, but he brought us down that road of the rhetoric against former President Trump.
Guys, if you haven't pressed that like button, if you are getting any enjoyment out of this video, then please do so. Helps me out massively. And also subscribe to the channel if you like it here. Back to it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, but I also think, Trace, this is an opportunity for us to step back as Americans. What happened last night was a wake-up call for all of us to say that, did Biden make those mistakes and did the left err? Absolutely they did. Is the media to blame for a lot of this national environment? Absolutely they are. But this is beyond the blame game. Blaming somebody else is easy. We have an opportunity to take the road less traveled and say, we're not just running from something. We are running to something. I think this could be, if one silver lining comes out of what was a tragic incident over the weekend, if one silver lining comes out of it, let it be that this could be a wake-up call to America to turn the page on this toxic chapter in our national history. And I think we have an opportunity to do it, and I think President Trump is, the way he conducted himself, not just that night, but throughout this entire weekend, I think has been really an example of what true leadership looks like. I spoke to him last night after midnight. He was in strong spirits, and I think his fortitude and I think the way in which he's thinking about this theme of national unity, I think is going to be good for the country
and more importantly, good for the next 4 years.
Are you saying, Vivek, that this is the end of the nicknames for former President Trump? It's the end of pointing out what his opponents are doing wrong and how they're doing it wrong. Is this kind of are we going to see a new Donald Trump when he finally speaks before the country, first speech after the assassination attempt?
The reality is, Trace, I think there's a side of Donald Trump that the rest of the country has not seen. I've gotten to know him particularly well after leaving the presidential race. And this is somebody who actually cares about national unity. I don't think the media or the platforms he's been given have given him an opportunity to show that side of how much he cares about this country. But he does. So it's not so much a change as much as it is showing the country who he really is and who we really are. Not just as a Republican Party, but as Americans. And I think people across the country are hungry for this. The America I miss is one where we could disagree vehemently at the dinner table, in the open debates that we have, yet still be friends and fellow citizens at the end of it. So no, that's not compromising on our values. It is standing for our values without compromise. But one of those values is that we settle our differences through peaceful free speech and open debate, not through violence, and that's what makes America great.
So as much as it is tempting to say the far leftist extremist actions and rhetoric have led us to this point, and this is why this happened, I do agree with Vivek's emphasis here on not playing the blame game, even though Biden literally last week said that Trump needed to be put in the bullseye.
You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing.
Just imagine, guys, if Trump had have said that. But despite this, Vivek's message here is a very powerful one. Let's not play the blame game. Let's actually use this as an opportunity to put the toxicity behind us and use Donald Trump's courageous actions as inspiration. At the very moment when he should have frozen up, paralyzed with terror, he put his own feelings aside, got to his feet, raised his fists and told his fellow Americans to fight. And moreover, how about the heroics of Corey Compratore, who lost his life on that day? Corey is a man that was a fireman who dedicated his life to public service and saving lives. And at the very moment when he heard gunshots and was staring death in the face, he sprung into action and shielded his family with his body and paid the ultimate price. Here is a small excerpt of a post that his daughter made. She said, "The media will not tell you that he died a real-life superhero. They're not going to tell you how quickly he threw my mum and I to the ground. They're not going to tell you he shielded my body from the bullet that came at us. He loved his family. He truly loved us enough to take a real bullet for us. I want nothing more than to wake up and for this not to be the reality for me and my family." Very few of us will ever be put in that situation, but Corey was. And in that moment, he fulfilled his masculine duty to protect his family. And what he did that day was the ultimate symbol of sacrifice and masculine leadership. I mean, I can only hope that if I were ever to be put in that situation, that I would be half as brave as Corey Compratore. And I truly do believe that amongst all of the immense grief that they must be feeling, his family can rest assured that his death was not in vain, because that's the sort of heroism that should inspire every single person who hears that story on a personal level. And now with that, let's get back into some of Vivek's highlights from the week. Let's check out the moment that he found out that JD Vance was going to be the VP and some ensuing clips.
I was just informed that while we were sitting here, Donald Trump has picked Senator JD Vance.
You kidding me? There it is. I see it. I'm glad to see it. It sounded like the winds were pointing in that direction.
Yes.
And I had offered him my preliminary congratulations, and I think he will be an outstanding vice president. I think President Trump and our country will be lucky to have him, and I want to see them succeed at a scale that not only makes the Republican Party thrive, but makes the country thrive. You know, I think we need more people like JD in American politics. So it's funny to me, reacting to the news in real time and thinking about the context in which he and I knew each other, both Southwest Ohio natives. Through different journeys, we were classmates in law school.
school, never imagined that this is where he and I would both be. We were reminiscing on that a little bit, and here we are just a little over 10 years later, and I am very proud of him. I mean, just to state the obvious, he is somebody who is an American dream story. Didn't come from standard political means or business backgrounds, and yet has succeeded at the highest levels in this country. JD was born in humble circumstances. He's lived the American dream as well. His wife, Usha, is somebody who's a friend of our family as well. She was also a law school classmate. I think she could be a big attribute in this campaign in reaching non-traditional voters. And even further for JD himself, he is somebody who has a unique vantage point for bringing in new voters. Here's what it is. He wasn't somebody who was a Donald Trump evangelist back in 2016. So I think that's actually
quite the opposite.
Yeah, well, I acknowledge that. But what I would say is he can actually reach a lot of other people who also weren't in the Donald Trump camp in 2016. And in a very personal and authentic way, he can say, look, here's why I moved. And here's why I want you to come with us as well. I think that's.
So what do you think about J.D. Vance as the pick for vice president?
I think he's an outstanding pick. He is somebody who I've actually personally known for a very long time. We were law school classmates, funny enough, and I've known him on a personal level outside of politics. And one thing I like about him is he's somebody who engages with disagreement in a thoughtful way, and he's also somebody who has lived the American dream. He didn't come from elite backgrounds, but he has succeeded at the highest levels in the country. And that speaks to me personally. My parents came to this country with no money. I've built multi-billion-dollar companies. He has a very similar story. And I hope that gives a lot of inspiration to Americans. And he's also going to help take the America First agenda to the next level, which is something I care a lot about as well.
A classy response there, and he must be a little bit salty, surely. Surely he would have thought that he was a decent chance and that he'd done enough, but he handled it well. And it's a bit of a coincidence that JD Vance and Vivek were in the same class as each other at Yale Law School, as was JD Vance's wife, Usla. And the two of them went on to have a son that they actually named Vivek. So that story really highlights the kind of impression that Vivek Ramaswamy leaves on people. And in terms of JD Vance being the VP pick, I have my own thoughts on that. I see the upside. I've read a lot on Twitter, watched a lot of reactions, learnt about him a lot, but also have some major reservations. Maybe I'll do a full video, full deep dive on that this week. Let me know in the comments if you want to see it. And now, for his speech at the RNC, this was 100% the best speech of the event. He hits the crowd straight between the eyes with the facts, and anybody who cares about this election and who cares about the future of the Western world should care about this speech and should be pretty fired up about it.
We're in the middle of a national identity crisis right now. Faith, patriotism, hard work, and family have disappeared, only to be replaced by race, gender, sexuality, and climate. But we're not going to win this election just by criticizing the other side. We're going to win this by standing for our own vision of who we really are. What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? It means we believe in the ideals of 1776. It means we believe in merit, that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why we will seal the southern border on day one. Thank you. It means the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not unelected bureaucrats in the deep state. These are not black ideas or white ideas. They are not even Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They are American ideas that we fought a revolution to secure. And the man who will revive these ideals in the United States of America is your next president, the 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. If you want to seal the border, vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump. If you want to reignite the economy in this country, vote Trump. If you want to revive national pride in this country, vote Trump. If you want to make America great again, vote Trump. But there is one more reason I'm going to ask you to vote Trump, and it's the most important one. It's the one the media won't talk about, but it's the truth. Donald Trump is the president who will actually unite this country, not through empty words, but through action. Because you know what? Success is unifying. Excellence is unifying. That's who we are as Americans. That's who we've always been. To those of you watching this at home tonight, I'd like to deliver a message that the media doesn't want you to hear from the Republican Party. Our message to black Americans is this. The media has tried to convince you for decades that Republicans don't care about your communities, but we do. We want for you what we want for every American. Safe neighborhoods, clean streets, good jobs, a better life for your children, and a justice system that treats everyone equally, regardless of your skin color and regardless of your political beliefs. Our message to every legal immigrant in this country is this. You're like my parents. You deserve the opportunity to secure a better life for your children in America. But our message to illegal immigrants is also this. We will return you to your country of origin, not because you're all bad people, but because you broke the law. And the United States of America was founded on the rule of law. Our message to millennials, speaking as one myself, yes, it's true. Our government sold us a false bill of goods with the Iraq War and the 2008 financial crisis, loading up our national debt that falls on our generation's shoulders, telling us that if we took out college loans, we'd somehow get a head start on the American dream, when it hasn't worked out that way. But we can't just be cynical about our country, because the United States of America is still the last best hope that we have, and we deserve a better class of politician, one who actually tells us the truth, even if it comes with some mean tweets from time to time. And our message to Gen Z is this. You're going to be the generation that actually saves this country. You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative. Say you want to get married, have kids, teach them to believe in God and pledge allegiance to their country. Because you know what? Fear has been infectious in this country, but courage can be contagious too. That too is what it means to be an American. And you know what? If you're at home and you disagree with everything I just said, our message to you is this. We will still defend to the death your right to say it, because that is who we are as Americans. We are the country where we can disagree like hell and still get together at the dinner table at the end of it. That is the America I know. That is the America we miss. We do not have to be ancient Rome. We don't have to be this nation in decline. We can still be a nation in our ascent. A nation whose best days, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, a nation whose best days are actually still ahead of us. Still on our way to that shining city on a hill, that country where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, or how long your last name is, that you will still get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we will revive this November when we send Donald J. Trump back to the White House. Thank you all. God bless you and your families, and may God bless our United States of America. Thank you.
So, such a powerful and invigorating speech, and one that for me shows Vivek's ability to be able to rise to the occasion and match the magnitude of the moment with the right sort of energy. And what he said about black Americans is very true. Why would you want people to keep them down and have them living in destitute and dangerous ghettos? Well, I mean, maybe if you're relying on their vote and you promise them destructive social measures that destroy their communities whilst actually masquerading as caring about them. No, politicians should be seeking to do what is right for all demographics of the country, even if that requires some deprogramming. And at a selfish level, guys, I would like to see that too. Next time I'm riding my Lime scooter around Miami or any other major city in America for that matter, I don't want to have the constant fear and trepidation that I'm going to take a wrong turn and end up in the hood. And this has happened to me before, guys. I'm just a white boy from down under who wants to be able to wear Vans, tuck my shirt into my pants, and ride my Lime scooter wherever I want to go. But seriously, the thing that I take away from this, and the reason why I'm so interested personally in Vivek's responses to these events, why I choose to share them with you, and why I choose to go into such detail with them, is because I admire his ability to be able to be assertive and uncompromising with his values and with his belief systems, and to be rock solid in that regard, whilst also doing this in a way that is really very classy and oriented toward the good of the people, and not just what is politically expedient or what will rile up his base. He really has some tremendous communication and leadership qualities, and I hope that he remains a very strong presence moving forward. So with that, guys, if you guys would like to find all my other links, they're there. If you guys would like to subscribe to the channel, of course, click right here. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.